There are many ministries and also so-called prophets these days talking about binding and loosing. And they relate to binding demon spirits and binding cohorts of devils from harming you. And they come with model prayers, how you can pray to bind unclean spirits from let me say from operating against you. Well, it is true that human beings have, let me say, we as human beings, we have a basic authority. We have a basis of authority as human beings because we are spirit beings with souls living in bodies. What is that basic authority? That is our thinking. I call it a basic. All right? That's what I call it. Why do I call it a basic? Because that's where it begins. But that's not all it is. Our thinking can either be in line with the word of the Most High, or it's in line with the paranormal. Now, when you are born in this world, you're born a sinner. You're lost. So your mindset is static. So sin is the only thing you're capable of doing. So your mind is already in line with the paranormal, whether you're aware of it or not. That's just the way it is. Now, some people's mindsets are more. Let's say like this: some people's mindsets are more leaning towards the paranormal. They are more involved in their thinking than others. Some people are more open to the paranormal than others, but nevertheless, when your thinking is not in agreement with Christ, then it is in agreement with the paranormal. There is no third option. And there is no such thing as neutrality. So, our natural authority as humans is with our thinking. And it's based on our thinking that we get involved in either the supernatural, that's the flow of the Holy Spirit, or we're involved in the outworking of devils. Don't think for a moment that you, as a soul, individual entity, are the one manifesting things. That's not true. As a human being, you get power from somewhere. Either you get power from the Holy Spirit, that's the true source of power, or you're going to counterfeit power, that's from the demonic realm. There ain't no third option, there's no own strength. That's a myth. But it's a myth that many people are believing. And this is what you need to understand. A lot of those people that talk about binding and loosing, they don't tell you that your mind is your basic authority. They don't tell you that your mind is either in agreement with Christ or your mind is against Christ. They don't tell you that. They don't put an emphasis on that. They want you to believe that you, apart from Christ, have power over the spirit world. Now understand this well. As a human being on the earth, you are dominant. The earth is the realm for mankind. Alright? So all spirit beings except the Most High because He's the creator, or all spirit beings that are not the Most High, that don't originate on the earth, are inferior in this dimension. So that's true. So in position, even when you were just a sinner, you are superior to those unclean spirits that are roaming around because they shouldn't even be here. Alright? Even holy angels shouldn't even be here. But that does not mean that you have power out of yourself. Because, listen, demons will enjoy working through you. They will. So when demons let you think that you have power out of yourself over them, they will comply with you to a certain extent. And let you think that you are the one controlling them. Now, why would they do this? Why? Because this will give them an advantage over you. This ignorance of you, that you don't understand that your mind is either in agreement with Christ. That means that you are streaming the power from the Holy Spirit, or your mind is against Christ. That means your mind is in darkness and you're feeding unclean spirits through the waste energy that your mind is generating, and you're feeding yourself with that same waste. If you lack this understanding, you're already deceived. So what does it come down to? Binding and loosing. Binding and loosing has to do with your way of thinking. Let me give an illustration just to keep this short. If you believe that others have the right to mistreat you because you didn't comply, or you cannot meet a certain societal expectation, you have a dark mindset. I'm saying as it is, you have a demonic mindset. For example, there are children that after they've grown up, they are proved that their parents hit them, that their parents use violence against them. There's a difference between this discipline and violence, but those children don't want to admit that their parents acted psychotic towards them. They give their parents the right to mistreat them. And with this, they're also agreeing that authority figures have a right to mistreat people. So when you think about it, that way of thinking is very dark and is not in agreement with Christ at all. When you have such a way of thinking, you have just bound yourself to you've bound yourself to the paranormal. That's one thing. You've also bound yourself from ever protesting when an authority figure is going too far. Because that's your agreement. They have a right to do that. So if you claim they have a right to do that and you contradict yourself, you're in a fight. You're in a conflict anyway because you're not in agreement with Christ, okay? So look, when you have such a way of thinking, you're also binding others in the sense that you are hindering others from seeking help if they are mistreated by authority figures. Why? Because you've agreed that, and you are reflecting with your thinking, and your thinking reflects in your actions and your words and your attitudes. You reflect that all authority figures have a right to mistreat. So when you're reflecting this, you're operating in a lie. And others will notice this lie and they will be influenced by it, even if they're not aware of it. So you are leading others astray. You are binding people. But I'm talking to believers now. Once you realize that, hold on a minute, this thought pattern, this thought construct does not glorify the Most High, is not in agreement with Christ, is devilish, is garbage, is demonic. The moment you acknowledge that, the moment you let that go, and you agree with what Christ is saying, you're released. That does not mean that immediately circumstances become at ease around you, but you're free. You know what? Because now, if you had parents that went too far with you, you can plainly say, look, those people may have not known any better, or whether they knew better or not doesn't matter. What they did was wrong, and it should have never happened, and nobody should agree with it. Once you do that, because that's an agreement with Christ, what's now happening is that you have broken that spell of honoring abusers. Because a lot of people are bound by that spell, that they keep honoring abusive people. And this spell that I'm talking to you about, it can affect a whole population. You can have a fascist dictatorship, and people just can't see it's a fascist dictatorship. Why? Because they've been trained to agree with mistreatment, to agree that people have a right to be violated in certain conditions. And because collectively people validate this, it has become witchcraft that is binding everyone in that community, except the people that are delivered. So when you agree with Christ, you're loosed. In a sense, you've been made free. You're not stuck anymore. Or you're not chained anymore by those paranormal chains. So binding and loosing in the first when it, at the root has little to do with binding and or loosing on unclean spirits or spirits in general. And that's to which you're thinking, because look at this. Those unclean spirits are operating here in the earth realm. They need the waste energy that's generated by dark thinking patterns. So when you have dark thinking patterns, whether you're aware of it or not, when you have those dark thinking patterns, you operate in them, you are contributing to the field of negative energy that's here on the earth, and you're contributing to those dark clouds that are forming, those dark energy clouds. And those unclean spirits, that's their fuel, that's their food, that's their resource in order to operate in earth realm. So the moment, let me say it like this, as long as you are still operating, or as long as you still have those dark thinking patterns, you are binding others without you being aware of it. The moment you agree with Christ, you're free. And I'm not going to make this video very long, or better, this is an audio recording. Check what you are agreeing with. I mean it. Be careful what you agree with. Because if you have a dark thinking pattern that you're holding on to because you think it's normal, you think it's right, you even have Bible verses to defend that way of thinking. And here's the thing, most other people that claim to follow Christ also have that thinking pattern. Also, a lot of unbelievers have that thinking pattern. So you begin to think, well, it's just natural. But what if it's a dark thinking pattern? You are keeping yourself open to the paranormal. And more than that, you are binding yourself to those demons. It's the same as you holding on to those unclean spirits. Look, when we think of possession, we often think of some gray, fake shadow figure that has invaded a human body and doesn't want to let that individual go. That's the image we have of possession. Now, it is true that there are times that some shadow figure is forcing himself into a human body. That's true, it happens. But there's also another side of possession that we often don't recognize as possession. When someone keeps holding on to dark thinking patterns, whether they're aware of it or not, they are holding on to the waste energy that those thinking patterns are generating. And by doing that, they are holding on to the unclean spirits around them. They are holding on to those spirits. And as a consequence, those unclean spirits will affect that individual. And the individual, at least in behavior, they'll begin to reflect those demons they're holding on to. Now that's also possession. It may be that no entity is even near the body of that individual, but because they hold on to thinking patterns that can't be defended with the gospel, because of that, they are binding not only themselves but also those that they come in contact with. So yes, it is true that human beings in the earth realm are superior to any type of other spirit being around. That doesn't mean the Most High, because He's the Creator. But it's not true that we can operate responsibly, spiritually, apart from the headship and leadership of Christ. Well, that's all I'm going to say for now. And be at peace. And again, check who you agree with. Be sure that you are in agreement with Christ and not with what you think Christ agrees with. Be at peace.